So, welcome all to this completely disorganized live YouTube. I think, unfortunately, as much as I tried to fix it, for some reason the live, I don't know if it actually picks up this microphone, and that's usually not a problem for my podcast and other videos. So I apologize if my sound is going to be a little bit more distant than usual, but it is what it is. So hopefully you can still get something out of it, even if the sound quality isn't as great. But hold on, let me just double check something actually. No sound, someone is saying. Okay, hold on. Okay, someone else is saying audio is good. So I think the person who said no sound is messing with me. All right, let's do this. So the plan here is just to do maybe half hour of Q&A, and the comments are already coming in on YouTube. So let's roll with it. I also just wanted to, usually on days like this, which are kind of weird because we had the whole Zidane thing back and forth this morning, fan base losing their minds, I like to hop on and just provide some sort of therapy and just reminder that, like, guys, let's just wait it out, before commenting. And I myself fall into this trap quite a bit, where I'll say, it happened with the Mbappe thing. It's on some level with the Tchouaméni thing too, where sometimes we just gotta hold up. Within 1 hour things can change, and even with Zidane's representatives denying the whole thing, we don't know for sure exactly what's going to happen, right? So let's just wait it up before losing our minds, and let's avoid the Zidane topic for now. We'll bring it forward. Let's answer some questions. I'm going to go through the comments that are flying through YouTube in a second here, but I just want to preface by saying, as always, we have rules for these Q&A sessions and asking questions and all of that stuff. We run a Real Madrid YouTube channel, podcast, and it's every single day we're covering this Real Madrid beat. So as you can imagine, a lot of repetitive questions. So get creative with your questions. If you are one of those people who would like to disagree with me on Twitter, I would encourage you to actually disagree with me in these live sessions, because I think that's more interesting than sending angry messages at me. So let's go through it. Floris Patin says, Kian, I want your take on the Vinicius versus Rodrigo debate. I know you're not a big fan of this debate, but we can do it in a non-toxic way. What do you think of their respective ceilings? Answer this question quite a bit, and it doesn't have to be a debate. It doesn't have to be Rodrigo versus Vinicius, but the fact of the matter is that Vinicius is a better player right now and has a higher ceiling, but that does not mean it's a knock on Rodrigo. I think Rodrigo has an incredibly high baseline. I think we already know he's going to be very good, and he is already good. And Lucas and I were talking about the leap he can take next season. If he can get to 15 goals next season, for example, that's going to be massive for us. And I think he's going to be a really good contributor. I mean, the fact that we're actually having conversations where we're like, okay, well, should we sign this right winger from X club, or should we rely on Rodrigo? And I think just the fact that we're there means that Rodrigo's in a really good spot. So I don't think it's much of a debate, more so than I think I'm really happy to have both of those players. I think we're in a good spot with those two. Love from India, Hala Madrid. Love to you back, Arman. Okay, let me just scroll through. I'm trying to find questions that are kind of more fun and exciting and away from the run-of-the-mill regular stuff. Cosmin says, will this Q&A be more about you or Real Madrid? It can be anything that you and I want it to be. Generally speaking, I will go for the most interesting question I think is interesting at the time. So if it's about me or Real Madrid, I'm happy to answer it if it's something that I'm interested in answering. Chibuezi Dike says, hey, Kian, quick question. Should we sign a right winger if Ascencio was sold, and who should it be, in my opinion, Gnabry? I don't think Ascencio necessarily gets in the way of anything, to be honest, partly because, as you guys who have followed me for a while know, that I'm not a massive Ascencio fan. I like him as a player, but I think he's a niche utility player, and I think there's a lot of players who can contribute more than him on the right wing. Irrespective of he stays or goes, I think we should sign Gnabry if he's on the table and if he's available. And I don't think that necessarily would get in the way of that. A lot of comments about Gnabry. A lot of people, I think, support that signing. You know, it's one thing for us to believe in him being a good signings, but I also think that the club necessarily may not see it that way. I don't think we've been really that linked with him, to be honest, either. So it can be a bit of a moot point, but I personally believe that Gnabry is good enough to justify signing him. Baslan Halal says, rank the top 3 Brazilian players that played for Real Madrid as club legends. Oh shit, that's going to be off the top of my head, but one and 2, irrespective of how you place them, 1 or 2, it's going to be Roberto Carlos and Marcelo. And number 3 becomes interesting because on pure peak and how good they were, it's probably Ronaldo Nazario. At the same time, very few people know about Pahinho, who was the very first superstar that we had in club history. That was before the Di Stefano and Puskás era. And Di Stefano laments not being able to play with him because Pahinho was like a freak ahead of his time, scoring buckets and buckets and buckets of goals and dominating. And we sold them just as we brought in Di Stefano, so we never got to see those 2 legends play together. I think off the top of my head, it would have to be either Pahinho or Ronaldo Nazario. I may be missing something, but generally, if I can't pull them off the top of my head, it means that they probably weren't that big. You guys can throw some names at me. I'd be happy to, but I'd probably just kind of swat them away as you bring them up, you know. But if I'm missing anyone, feel free to comment. Ignacio says, what's your favorite underrated, not as talked about moment as a Real Madrid fan? Much appreciation. If you want to elaborate, Ignacio, I'd be happy to answer that further and unpack that. What do you mean by underrated? And what era are we talking about? Timberland says, hi, Kian, do you think Alaba will be better than Mendy as a left back going into the next season? My personal opinion on that is no. I disagree with some of the other journalists on this subject, actually. I think David Alaba's best position is a left center back, and I think Ferland Mendy, the way he can lock down opponents, is admirable. And I also think if you're worried about the attacking aspect of it, we've seen that wrinkle so many times this season where Mendy and Alaba can interchange. Mendy drops and Alaba pushes up and puts a cross in. And I also think Mendy's a little bit underrated going forward. He's not good at dribbling or doing the things that Marcelo did, but he's one of the best ball carriers in Europe from his position and can get into the final third. But we also have to remember that Ancelotti, by design, asked him not to join the final third in most of those Champions League games, right? He wanted him to stay back to face the threats. So in other games where he's allowed to venture up, like, for example, against Levante recently, he scored a goal and was his runs created space for Vinicius. So I personally, I would keep Alaba left center back and Mendy left back. Let's see. All right, I'm really falling behind in these comments. YouTube is actually probably the most so far in terms of sheer volume of comments that come in at a rapid space. And I don't even have a huge following on YouTube yet. It might be the hardest one to keep up with. Let's see. Let me see. Tarek Gokta says, hey, Kian, Tarek from Sydney, Australia here. I appreciate your time and effort into making content. Your personality is great. The stereotype of Canadians are nice people is true. That's funny. I don't know if I consider myself as a nice person, but I do love people and I love just talking to people. So maybe I come off that way. If you maybe spend time with me all day, you would think differently. But I appreciate the love. I love Australia. I've been there once in my life. I've been to Sydney, and it's basically a warmer Canada. And I'm always down for warm Canada. You know, I'd love to go there if it wasn't so far. Question about Fran Garcia coming back. Would he be a good decision if Mendy stays and Alaba's the first choice left back? Obviously, in that scenario, no. I think it would just stall his development. But at the same time, Fran Garcia is one of the best fullbacks in the league. And I think if he were to arrive, it would only make sense if it's going to be Mendy and Fran Garcia for that position. I personally am also really high on Miguel. I love what I see with him from Castilla. I liked his cameos with us, even though they were brief. I really believe in him, but I also want to just see him play regularly. Gregory Fedorov says, Kian, is it unreasonable to view Tchouaméni as the Kronos successor? I know that you mean Cruz, and the only reason I know that is because my phone literally all the time autocorrects Cruz to Kronos, and I think it's actually epic because Kronos is a badass name, and it's kind of fitting, like as this cyborg character. But Cruz, Tchouaméni, different players. To be quite honest, I think Cruz is an unbelievably rare unicorn that you won't see for a long time, if ever. I mean, he's just so unique. I mean, we often compare Modric and Xavi and say who's the best central midfielder of all time. I actually think, stylistically speaking, Cruz and Xavi are more similar. And to have that vertical passing demon who can control and get the ball into the final third as a ball progressor, they're very rare, unique players, and they're probably the two best passers in football history. So no, Tchouaméni doesn't fit that bill, but he can fill, more similar, stylistically speaking. I'd put him in like almost like a Busquets kind of figure who can dictate tempo from deep. And he's not known as like a playmaker, but as the kind of guy who can play deeper, play quarterback, and get the ball up the field, but also read passing lanes and defend. I think that's the bet. I mean, Cruz will never be as good defensively as Tchouaméni. Tchouaméni is like one of the best readers of the game from that position. So, Mahan Razai says, "I'm joining you in raising cattle in a farm." A lot of jokes today about me getting a farm because I had made the joke on the podcast that if Zidane becomes a PSG coach, I'm retiring as a journalist. I'm not a football fan anymore. I'm gonna live out the rest of my days raising cattle as a monk somewhere. So let's hope that I don't have to do that. Pranav says, I canceled my meeting for this. That's what I'm fucking talking about right there. That's loyalty and dedication to the cause. Pranav, get a good question in to make up for it. Cosmin says, okay, that's an old question. All right, I'm really falling behind here. All right, I'm really falling behind. All right, I'm going to speed things up a little bit. Okay. And Carlo questions, Mourinho questions, Ramos questions, Marcelo questions. Okay. Some of the stuff we've already discussed a lot. Do I think Antony from Ajax is an interesting signing? I followed him closely and he has amazing potential. I think he's a really good player. I don't think I would justify benching Rodrigo for Antony, with all due respect to Antony. Have I noticed, Ben 10 says, have I noticed that the Bernabeu atmosphere has decreased over the years? Yes, it has. Every year it decreases in atmosphere. That's mostly because tickets are more expensive. More rich people, suit and ties, are sitting in the stadium. And those guys don't make noise. The ones who make noise are the ones who are outside the stadium. And also, now, having said that, on big Champions League nights, it's still the best stadium and the best atmosphere in Europe, hands down. It's unbelievable. You'll go deaf. I mean, it's incredible. But on a regular run-of-mill game, like if you just show up to the Bernabeu for like a game against a La Liga team, then in that situation, it's pretty boring, to be honest. The atmosphere itself, and also you'll see a lot of tourists come in who just don't really care. They're just coming in to like take in the game at the Bernabeu, right? So let's see. Questions about a back three. I would urge you guys to go and listen to the podcast Jose and I did on the Welcome Rudiger podcast. We answered that question in quite detail here. We'll do a much better justice than I will in this brief moment. Kauku Sampola says, what kind of music do you listen to and which Real Madrid player would make the best rock star? I listen to generally two genres, and that is deep house music. If you guys are into that stuff, I really love Nora on Pure, Rufus du Sol, the kind of song that, kind of just puts me, like the female vocals, picture like the sun setting on a rooftop bar, and just like these really beautiful chill house beats. That's my jam. It's either that or hip hop. Love J. Cole, love Drake, and I'm always listening to the newest album that anyone drops on Apple Music. So I love Summer Walker, female vocals, Jessie Reyes, Jenna Aiko. Those are my go-tos, generally speaking. If I'm working, it's a lot of house though, because I don't like to listen to words when I'm working. And I love for working out, movie soundtracks. So Tenet, any of the Batman stuff, all epic stuff to work out to. Dev says I haven't watched him regularly, but I would like to see Odegaard on the right wing with Fede, Camavinga, Tchouaméni as the midfielders. It would work. It would definitely work. That ship has sailed, though, obviously. All right. Damn, like when new comments come up, it just bumps everything, so I missed some of the older ones. Okay, hold on. Okay. Armand Bakshi says, why has our interest in Pedro Porro died? I mean, I personally, I'm a little bit underqualified to speak about Pedro Porro because I don't watch the Portuguese league. But my guess is that Dave Clubdish believes in Carvajal and Vasquez, and Carvajal was really good in the Champions League run towards the end. Whether you agree with that or not is not really the point. It's more about what the club thinks. Do I think Mendy can play as a center back? I think he can play as a center back in a 3-5-2, or the interchanging moments between him and Alaba where he periodically shifts to that position, but not as a full-time center back. His ball progression from that position just isn't good enough. Ignacio clarifies the earlier question. Just your personal favorite moment that normally doesn't get placed in the top list, like Ramos's goal for like Decima, Ronaldo hat-trick at Old Trafford, etc. Okay, so I guess like more hipster choices of my favorite moments. I'll give you some. So I actually, if you Google Kiyan Sobhani Real Madrid archive, a couple of years ago or so, maybe more, 3 years ago, I wrote an article about all of my favorite or my most memorable moments since starting to watch the team since basically 1998. And I have a lot of hipster choices there, and I think you'll see it. And that's cool to read also with that sense because there's videos to go along with what I'm saying. But a lot of my favorite memories growing up will be a lot of Raul goals. So many Raul goals that just blew my mind at the time as a kid. So, I mean, Ronaldo at hat-trick at Old Trafford is obviously a great shout. Basically, Figo, the entire first season at the club, where he would just dribble past anyone. Doesn't matter if he was going up against, Paolo Maldini or Thor. Like, he would just be like, oh, cool, that's cute. You think you can defend me, and I'm just going to burn your soul. And then he would dribble past 3-4 players after that. Anything Figo in that first season was mind-blowing to me. But I would encourage you to go look that up, Ignacio. Kiyan Sobhani Real Madrid archives. There's a massive list, long article with videos accompanying all my favorite moments. I also like anyone. So like Ashin Varhi says, Kiyan, love your work, man. I appreciate that. I would love for people to don't like. I know there's a lot of people who just like disagree with me all the time. I would love for those people, if there's like something you disagree with, please like just type it out. Because for some reason the people who disagree don't say anything to me on the live. So I just want to. I don't want to be intimidating. I want you guys to disagree with me face to face rather than sending me hate mail. I'm really interested in seeing more of those people, but they just don't show up to these things. Decode says, Redondo being part of the club like some other legends, what do you think? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but if you're asking if Redondo is a club legend, then he is. Sanjog says, how about Nkunku at right wing? I think he would be an interesting signing. I think he's also versatile, can play in a couple different positions across the front three, has his youth. But I still don't think he's a better player than Rodrigo, so it really depends on what you're aiming to do, what his role is. Brandon, Looney Tunes fan 2000 says, I'm new here. Welcome, my friend. I'm also a Looney Tunes fan, and my son is a big Bugs Bunny fan. Fizi Hafiz says, which Real Madrid players, present and past, make you think only if they fulfill their potential, minus Robinho? I care little for Robinho. He's not a good person, but you can just Google his name if you don't know what I'm talking about. But for me, it's like players like Javier Portillo, Jesse. Those are the two that always stood out to me as like, damn, man, you really did not live up to the hype. Jesse obviously had his own problems too and injuries, so I want to be fair to him. But Daryl Tobico says, who do I think we should sign for a striker since the non-EU slot is a problem? I would not go overboard with that signing. I think that a backup striker is a role that is very hard to fill at Real Madrid because it's like how many minutes per season? I mean, it's going to be more next season, I think, because I assume Benzema will rest a little bit more. But if I had to guess, I think what the club will do is maybe give Eden Hazard some false 9 minutes if they have to keep him next season, and Rodrigo there as well. I mean, Jovic and Mariano barely played. Maybe you could bring back Mayoral and give him some limited minutes. Maybe you could call up again. Like the problem is if you're going to call up Latasa, for example, like or Arribas for a false 9 role. Even then, I don't even think Ancelotti would go that route because like it's really hard to like have a player who doesn't play all season and throw him in for 30 minutes at the end of the game, right? It's hard. It's hard one to fill. So I think you go for a lower profile. All right, falling behind again. Faiz Mohammed says, oh man, it just disappeared again because people are commenting it. Where'd it go? I don't know where it went. I'm sorry, Faiz. I found it. Wouldn't it be better for you to post School of Real Madrid content in Managing Madrid's feed? It will attract more views. Maybe. I mean, like it's owned by different people, so it's harder to do that. But we do cross post. You know, we'll always link it and funnel people through there. You know, so spread the word, Faiz. Spread the word. Let's see. Subhajit Roy says, following you from India. Welcome, my friend. Daryl says, do I believe in a Hazard redemption next season? I believe that maybe he can improve based on what we've seen in the past 2 years, but he's not going to be the Hazard of old, that's for sure. Lucas and I talked about it, but Hazard 2017, 2019 basically dominated every single offensive metric in the Premier League, and it wasn't close. Like he was arguably the best player in the entire country. You're not getting that version of Hazard back, but maybe you can get a good player. I've spoken at length. I don't want to elaborate too much about it because I've already spoken so much about it, and I'm writing about it too. But his best role in Belgium doesn't exist with Real Madrid. So your best bet now is bringing him off the bench for Vinicius or Benzema. Let's see. Faye says, is Redondo one of the most underrated players ever for Real Madrid? He doesn't get much love or attention from Madrid fans, even though he's one of the best midfielders for us. I mean, if he's not getting attention or love, it just means people are just ignorant or they're new fans. I mean, anyone who knows anything knows that Redondo is probably our best defensive midfielder of all time. Douglas Barrientos says, Kubo had a good game today with Japan as a central midfielder and scored a goal. That's great to hear. I did see that he scored the goal, but I haven't kept tabs more than that. All right, some disagreements finally. Flores says, Kian, I'm going to disagree with you on not wanting to get certain players because they do not justify benching Rodrigo. Rodrigo is a left winger and not remotely close to Vinicius, and we need a natural right winger. Yeah, so I agree with you that Rodrigo's best position is left wing, but he's not going to start there, and he is going to play more on the right wing by default because he's also very good there. So again, it depends on who the player is to me. If we get a Gnabry, I think that's justifiable. I think if it's someone else, like, you know, to me, like, and someone else is saying, I disagree with you about Nkunku. To me, Nkunku is an interesting player, but he's not worth taking Rodrigo's minutes away to me. Gnabry would be. Anthony wouldn't be. So that's the way I see it. The code clarifies his Redondo question from earlier. I mean, Redondo having a job or a role at Real Madrid like Raul and other legends. I wonder if we get his influence for the youth. Yeah, I mean, it's weird, like, because Redondo years ago, and I'm thinking it must have been like 5 years ago now, he was getting his UEFA coaching license. And then after that, he just disappeared. We don't know what happened to him. He basically lives a very low profile life, and we haven't heard from him. And I don't know what's going on there. So yeah, I would love for him to come back in whatever capacity, but I don't know what's going on. Okay. Falling behind again. Greg Hills, it's disappeared. All right. Greg Hill says, I wish we tried for Pau Torres before Rudiger. I get that he's world-class, but Torres seems like a perfect fit because he has all that plus age on the side, and Ramos recommended him as well. Rudiger is a better player. I think he's definitely, I'd rather have Rudiger than Pau Torres. Pau Torres has his own struggles. He hasn't developed that well. He's had his own struggles, and I'd rather Rudiger. Chi-Town Sports Fan says, do you see the lack of Spanish talent worrying? Obviously, the best will play for Madrid, but it seems all the top talent from Spain is choosing Barca. I don't think it's about choosing Barca. You know, the thing with Barca and Real Madrid, like everyone's talking about Gavi, Pedri, it's all about timing, right? It's all about timing. So Gavi and Pedri wouldn't have, had a career had they come up at a different time. They certainly wouldn't have been Real Madrid starting players if they came up during this era as well. So I do understand that, it's cool to have more Spanish players, and by default and by the law and by La Liga laws, you actually need to have a squad mostly built up of Spanish players. But my philosophy has always been, I care little about where you're from, and I care more about how good you are. Think about some of the greatest players in Real Madrid history. Di Stefano, Cristiano Ronaldo, Puskas, Benzema, Roberto Carlos, Marcelo, Luka Modric, Fernando Redondo. These guys weren't Spanish. They're legends. They love the club. So, it's cool to have homegrown talent for sure. Don't get me wrong, but I don't really think about it as a big deal as maybe some others do. Flores says, yes, Rodrigo is a good player on the right wing, but for instance, players like Mahrez or Anthony have a strong left foot. It's true. Mahrez is probably another one I would take as a starter right wing player. Anthony, I'm more skeptical about just the fact that I want to see him on a bigger team. And his numbers are actually not like his. If you look at his numbers and his metrics, are not that impressive, compared to like some of the other players. And Rodrigo's an incredibly efficient player on that side. Warren Africa says, hi Kian, I'm tuning in from Cape Town in South Africa. My question, where is Marcelo going? His future plans? Love your content. Hala Madrid. Based on what I know is that I don't think he's done playing football yet. I think he's going to cash in one more like overseas or a different country before he retires. I think he obviously would have liked to have extended at Real Madrid, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I imagine he plays 1 or 2 years more like Roberto Carlos did at Fenerbahce or something like that, or go back to Brazil and then call it quits and basically just be a full-time dad in Madrid because his son is obviously playing for Real Madrid. Let's see. SM says, La Liga greats from 2000s who were not Barcelona and Real Madrid players was Gaisca Mendieta of Valencia, one of them. Mendieta was definitely one of them. Juan Carlos Valerón, Joaquin, we think about Joaquin still playing now, which is crazy, but Joaquin 2000 range was a phenom. Who else? Pedro Monites, who obviously had a stint at Real Madrid. Jalminia, Moro Silva, Diego Tristan, anyone from Super Depor, basically. Who am I forgetting? Juan Roman Riquelme, Pablo Aimar. Really fun era, actually, in that range. Ron says, do you think cashing on Ascencio would be a mistake? What if he becomes Kevin De Bruyne or Mo Salah at some other club? Then I think you're just going to have to, I don't know, be happy for him. It's going to be very unlikely if that happens. Let's see. Okay, there's actually not many new things to address, and I think I'm caught up. So maybe I will, and we're at the 30-minute mark, which is what I wanted to aim for, because after this I gotta meet a deadline, do a workout, and then go on vacation with my family and spend some much needed time with my kids. So let me see. Yeah, I think I'm gonna wrap it here. There's nothing really super interesting coming in. All right, I'll take one more. Khalid Hashim says, question to Kian, I just feel like we haven't had a pure right winger since Arjen Robben. And before you say it, Bale was a left back. Why don't we go for a left-footed right winger like Mahrez? Well, you know, the interesting thing about Real Madrid history is that there's, you know, Lucas and I were discussing about it, and this we posted on YouTube also yesterday, the discussion about Bale and the best right wingers in Real Madrid history. And I think we came up with the conclusion that Bale is the best right winger in club history. And, you know, what you're saying now also is weird, because you're saying that we need a pure right winger who is left-footed. That's what Bale was. You know, just because he started his career as a left back doesn't mean he didn't turn into a pure right winger. So if you go back to Real Madrid history, anyone you'd put on that right side to start as like the all-time Real Madrid 11, they're not going to be a natural right winger. You know, it's going to be Di Stefano or Puskás on that side, who are not pure right wingers. Puskás, you know, people think of Puskás as a central forward, but he spent a lot of time on the right side and then cutting in. Di Stefano was playing everywhere. So I think like you're not going to put necessarily a natural right winger in that role. It doesn't have to be a natural right winger, but as a pure left winger, yeah, I mean, I would be happy with someone like Mahrez. So I don't think you're wrong, but definitely to say like we haven't had a pure right winger since Arjen Robben is false, because Bale was that. So yeah, a lot of people are just saying thank you, and we're gonna wrap it up here. And IMT, by the way, spamming this comment about Mayral. I already talked about it. You know, he is a potential backup striker for next season. So Giuseppe Raul says Kiana should do these more often. They are so cool. Yeah, it's more about time, my friend. That's pretty much what it comes down to, is time. So today I don't have a podcast plan, and I wanted to put up some content. So I'm going to throw this on the Managing Madrid podcast feed, which I think picked up my microphone better than YouTube did. So the podcast listeners may have a better audio quality, possibly. I'm not sure. But I'm going to upload this, and I'm obviously going to put this on YouTube too. It's not just going to be a live. So, but I'll try. I'll definitely try. So thank you guys all for tuning in. I appreciate the kind words as we're signing off here. There's a lot. So thank you so much. And we'll try to do this again. Housekeeping is that, just if you haven't already, please go to patreon.com/managingmadrid. It's $3 to become a member. You get access to all of our content, and it's all of you guys in here. You have access to the internet. I'm sure there's $3 you can carve out and put it towards getting a ton more value. Whether it's you're buying a bag of chips for $3 or buying a Starbucks coffee, consider cutting that one out per month, going over to patreon.com/managingmadrid, supporting high quality journalism. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about all the people who in Managing Madrid who basically volunteer their time to make this possible. You're going to help them. You're also, because if we don't, then we can't continue doing this, right? So consider it if you like high quality journalism and supporting it. And also feel free to follow me on Twitter, Instagram @KeonSo. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you haven't already. And thank you. Thank you, and Hala Madrid.